your mindset, your inner world is really your personal real estate that no one else can inhabit or get their hands on unless you allow them access.
Hello, everyone. Hello, friends. This is Michelle Phillips, and you are in for the best treat ever today. In the studio, I have Patricia Stark, who is not only an author, speaker, communication coach, and trainer, but she's a colleague and someone I've known for way more years than I care to admit. But welcome, Patricia.
Michelle, I'm so happy to be here with you. And we're going to have a great conversation because we always do. We get in that flow together. So I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Oh my God. The two of us together, we could just go forever. So I'm going to read all about her and then I'll add my own spin to it because she's quite fascinating and fabulous. You may have read her best-selling book, seen her on Inside Edition, the History Channel, Dr. Phil's Morning on Merit, WPIX, Fox, PBS, or in her recurring role on Law and Order, Criminal Intent, or National Olay commercial. Or you may have heard her on WABC Radio with Ernie Anastas, Positive News You Can Use. She is a sought-after speaker, coach, and trainer working with top tier media professionals, executives, celebrities, and women's leadership organizations. She has been running her own business for many years. She'll tell us how many because I'm not exactly sure. She is the president of Patricia Stark Communications. She is certified in body language, emotional intelligence, social intelligence. She's a certified coach. This list goes on and on. She is the real deal. And that's what we are going to talk about on this show. I want to talk about real people who are making a real impact and using all these things. So welcome, Patricia, to my Write the Outcome podcast episode. I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4, right in the beginning.
I love the name of the podcast. And thank you to your viewers for hanging on through that long intro. So sorry, but yes, you're right. We've had a lot of things going on over the last several decades. But so I'm so glad to be here with you. Thank you for
inviting me. If we were hanging out in my backyard, I would say, never apologize for your success. Right? We would be coaching each other. And that's the beauty.
There you go. We're not perfect.
That's the beauty of our relationship and our friendship. And I have her book, her best-selling book here, Confidence, which, first of all, when she told me the title, I thought, that is the most brilliant title I've ever heard. So share with us the journey. I mean, because you've been doing this a long time. So what is the journey that led you to the concept of confidence and like kind of where did it start to where you are now?
Yeah, well, it was quite a journey, so I will try to condense it. But, when I was younger, I had a really bad social anxiety, a lot of trouble communicating confidently, for sure. And part of my development and growth to help me with that was I started reading a lot of personal and professional development books and listening to audio tapes. I mean, going way back to Norman Vincent Peale and all the power of positive thinking. And I remember along the way, realizing it was helping me so much. And I thought, God, I'd love to be in the position to write my own book someday. And then in 2007, I went out to Irvine, California to this book marketing conference with the Chicken Soup for the Soul guys. And it was still very premature, but I had a concept. We did like this speed dating thing with these literary agents. And this one literary agent said, you're the only person I'm giving a card to today. She goes, It's still immature, but you at least have a platform and an idea that I like. So that was a little bit of encouragement. And then I would just keep, notes in a file and I would keep the ideas coming. And then I met, a person that Christine Baker, who helped you with your book, I believe, in the very beginning. And I met her on a panel at a college, and she had written some book about basketball, women's basketball or something, and she inspired me. And then knowing that you were writing the book inspired me. And then she said to me, because she became like an editor as well, and she helped me get the chapters in order. She said, just come up with the concepts for like 14 chapters or 20 chapters, whatever it was at the time. And so she really helped me with that initial skeletal structure. So we went from 2007 to 2014. It's a dream. Like a lot of people say they're going to do something and they never do. And that's human nature. But then in 2014, I was reignited. And then I started writing here and there. But again, always part-time, always on the side. She helped me. And then I want to say in about 2019, I reached out to another editor that I had found. I downloaded some blueprint master a script type of thing online. I invest like $800 in this. I very rarely do that online, but it was out, how to write a best-selling book blueprint, something like that. And I really got a lot from it. And I found her through that. And then that editor really helped me go even further. So that was 2019. And then she introduced me to a literary agent that she was working with, who had been an editor with Simon & Schuster for many years and then decided to become a literary agent. And she liked the idea. So I got my literary agent in 2019. She helped me expand it because you don't know what you don't know when you're writing a book, right? For the first time. And then she got me, we submitted to many places. Didn't get a bite at the top ones. I did get invited into HarperCollins for an interview, but they basically said, we need to know you can make us millions of dollars and you're not there yet. So I was like, got it. Thanks for the good advice. But then I signed with a mid-market company called Sounds True. They do a lot of, personal development, spirituality, yoga, and they wanted to branch a little bit more into the business end, like a hybrid of that, which my book is. And I signed my book deal on January 15th of 2020.
Oh my
so
God.
all those people that joked about writing a book during that downtime, I had to.
You did. I want to point out a couple of things that you're really illustrating here. Number one, it takes a village.
Yeah.
Women supporting women. I think we get a bad rap that women don't support each other. And look at all these beautiful earth angels that helped you. One
Right.
led to the next, that led to the next.
Exactly.
The other thing you highlight is that perseverance, that taking time. Dreams don't, you don't just, wave a wand like in the movies. That would be nice if we could just wave magic wands. But you stuck to it and you kept growing. So even the name Confidence, did you wake up one night and that just hit you? Where did that come from?
No. So interestingly enough, that was not I didn't have a title for the book originally. Actually, I think I was going to call it One Order of Confidence, like the regular word confidence. And it was going to look like it was being handed to you on a platter. That was like my initial incarnation. And then the final chapter of the book where I did natural remedies and foods and different things that, you can have and ingest, little quick fixes that can help calm your nerves. That last chapter was confidence. And the reason I came up with that term was because so many of my clients and students, either wanted to find their calm because they were stressed out and having anxiety, or they wanted to find their confidence because they didn't, believe in their expertise or, hadn't developed that self-trust yet. So then when I named the last chapter that, I just had this moment where I was like, wait a minute, that's the title of the book. And I went back through the entire manuscript and anywhere I searched for the word confidence, I changed to confidence. And then I had it, the term itself, registered, trademarked by the U.S. government so that I could own that term in the United States.
I just love it. It's trusting the process,
Yeah.
right? When you told me that title, I thought, oh my gosh, that is the most brilliant thing I ever heard. So I just love it. And I love what you're saying about the tools. People were stressed or they needed to anti-stress. They needed calm or they needed confidence. So what's the biggest tool, or like maybe let's talk about 2 to 3 tips that you give your clients on a regular basis?
Yeah. Well, I think that sometimes when people hear the term confidence, they think it's kind of this low energy, I'm meditating, all that. And it's really this inner calm, this peaceful power, this place of trust within you. Almost like, the hurricane has that calm in the middle. And it's more of what's going on in your inner world. And are you cultivating that? We're so inundated from external sources and there's so much we can't control in the world. So one of the first things that I will tell my clients is that your mindset, your inner world is really your personal real estate that no one else can inhabit or get their hands on unless you allow them access. And that could be people, events, things that people say. So we always will start from within. And it doesn't matter if it's a public speaking client, someone that's going to be going in front of the media, someone that's having a confrontational phone call or conversation. I will talk to them about what are you doing ahead of time to get right with yourself first. Like get yourself calm, clear your thoughts, think about what is the outcome, see yourself positively going through the steps, because many times we envision the worst case scenario. What could go wrong? They're going to hate me. They're not going to like this. Interview is going to go terrible. Like we both visualize this and have this self-talk that completely starts us out with 2 strikes against us before we even get into the situation. So we have to start from within first, because all of our communication skills, interpersonal skills, and relationship skills all start internally with us first.
And I love the visual you gave. The metaphors are so good. The visual of it's your real estate. So if it was my property in my head, what kind of plants am I planting? What's my front door look like? What am I doing ahead of time? Like if people come to your home, we fix up our homes nicely and we're proud when people come into the door. So I'm thinking of the metaphor of real estate that you're giving. And I've never used that term before, but I'm loving it's almost the same in your mind. So what are you planting there? What are you preparing? That's
I work with a lot of real estate executives recently, and I came up with that analogy recently during a speech, and it's really applicable because I do talk about how, there's that inner critic, right? And it's a squatter in your mind. And,
that's another good visual.
Very loud if you allow it to be, right?
So what about someone who just comes to you and says, I'm thinking all these negative thoughts. And I love, you said something very important too. You said, it's the work you do before, right? You do the thing you need to do. So if someone says, there's like this squatter, I can't stop the negative voice, I'm so anxious, where do you start with someone like that? Like what's a simple takeaway that you could give someone?
Yeah, well, it's an exercise that I do with them, but they can do it with themselves if they're willing to. And because a lot of people either don't want to take the time to do this or just don't think it works, right? So there is a little bit of meditation or self-hypnosis that kind of goes into this with doing this kind of internal work. And I'll do this even with people over Zoom. I'll have them close their eyes and I'll say, okay, right now, I'm going to walk you through the event that you're, anticipating, that you're fearing, or that you're beating yourself up about. And I'll walk them through it, helping them visualize, seeing it go the way they want it to, seeing themselves show up the way that they want to show up, right through to getting great feedback of how things went. And even more effective is sometimes I'll flip it and I'll say, okay, I want you to close your eyes. And now I want you to narrate to me how you're going to show up, how it's going to unfold, who, what, where, when, why, and how. What are you smelling? What are you seeing? Have them go through this in their mind, and not in a negative way, not in worst case scenario, but I want you to tell me specifically what you're feeling and thinking in the right way to be successful here. And I've had people during this exercise cry. I had one woman who was worked for a law firm, and she had a really high up position, but she was the only one that was not an attorney. And she always felt less than because she had left her pursuit of that to raise a family. And then she ended up working in this industry. But all of the attorneys relied on her so much. She was in charge of so many things, but she had this inner, critic saying, I'm not as good as them. But yet they all depended on her and looked up to her. And she was going to be on this panel. And we did this exercise where she went through seeing the panel successfully, because she would choke up, she would blank out, want to run off the stage, right through to people coming up to her and telling her how beneficial it was and what they got out of it. She started crying, and I was like, can you tell me why you're crying? And she said, because I've never seen myself succeed in my mind. I've only thought about how I was going to look if something went wrong or I said the wrong thing. She only envisioned herself failing.
And what's the gift? So that's write the outcome. So I love that gift of writing your own outcome, which is what this whole podcast is based on. But what I love what you did with this client is some people, they just can't see it. So I like when you said you have them close their eyes and you walk them through the visualization. That's very powerful, because once they have something to kind of almost stick their teeth into, then they could probably do it on their own. But some people, they're so conditioned to think the worst that they don't even know where to start when it comes to visualizing the successful outcome or writing the successful outcome. That is so powerful.
Well, because so many people do nothing to try to harness their inner world. It's like a bucking bronco. And that's why it's so hard, even for me in the beginning when I first started meditating. You just, it's all over the place. And I think that, when I speak to young people in high schools, and I just had this conversation to some health classes last week, I was like, a lot of people are afraid to just sit in silence. We need the distraction. We want the music. We want the video. We want our phone. We want all these things, because sometimes it's a scary place to just sit there and really feel your emotions and really think about things and really think things through. And some people, frankly, don't want to think deeply like that because it is intimidating and it is scary. But you have to get comfortable with that, because it's the only way to truly be in charge of your own inner world, which you have access to. Just we either ignore it, we're afraid of it, or we just don't understand the power that we have.
We could go on forever. This is such good information, because even you and I know this. And sometimes I say to myself, oh my gosh, I'm getting addicted to my phone, right? I have to keep checking my email or checking social media or checking something. And for us, people like us that do this work on a daily basis, it's that knowledge of knowing I need to step away or I need to decompress. I need to find my balance again. So I want to ask you, if you have to give a presentation to a big group of people and maybe you have a little butterfly in you and you need the confidence.
Michelle.
What's the Patricia Stark, top 3 tips for when you prepare for an audience?
Yeah. Well, it's again, way in advance when I feel this way. So now when I go out onto the stage, because I've done this so much and worked in broadcasting and have done a lot of speeches, by the time I get to that stage, I'm just like, let's go. I love these people. I'm so happy to be here. I know I have something to offer. Where I really beat myself up or, go through these rituals is prior to the event. And my husband we have this conversation, Brian, all the time, who he'll say, you realize that this is part of your preparation to make sure that you're sharp and to make sure you're covering all the bases. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. So I just had this conversation with him. I got invited for a gig down in Florida in May, where I'm going to be speaking with coaches that are in the NFL. And they want me to talk about interview skills and mindset and all these different things. So, right away, I go back to, I'm that 20-year-old little girl that no one's going to take seriously and knows nothing about, I know stuff about football, but certainly not the way that they do. And I go right back to thinking, oh my gosh, can I do this? Am I going to be able to give them enough value? Am I going to be able to really, be of service and resonate with them? And of course, I know I'm going to do my due diligence and I'm going to get on the phone with the people that hired me and I'm going to have them take surveys and say, we only got a limited amount of time. What are the takeaways that are going to resonate with them? What do you think is going to really, be good for them to hear? So I know that I will do this, but there's always that little girl that comes out in a brief moment that says, are you sure you're not still that?
Oh, okay. I want to stop on this because it's so good. I want everyone listening to really get this, that those doubtful moments are part of the process and that you shouldn't be beating yourself up when you're having them. You should say, this is part of the process. This too shall pass if I let it pass, which is what you're saying. But a lot of people will get stuck in that and never get out of that hole, right? They keep just digging the negativity. I would say you can't get to the bottom of a hole you're digging. So the difference is knowing when to stop digging.
Right. Knowing when to stop digging and not being afraid of the fear of it. Right. So the fear is part of it. The fear makes you sharp. The fear makes you do your due diligence. The fear gets you ready. But if you let the fear disable you instead of sharpen you, that's the problem. But the fear is going to be there. The nerves are going to be there. The self-doubt is going to be there because we are imperfect human beings. We are always thinking, am I not enough? Or, what if and that? And, I'm going to get into a little bit of a spiritual end of things here.
Let's go. That's my, me, that's my favorite place to go.
Because that's who I am. And something dawned on me recently, and you may have heard this term before. Years ago when I was listening to a Norman Vincent Peale tape, he had on a man that had been in politics and got arrested. Something bad went down and he had to go to jail. And he had found, his belief while he was in jail. And when he came out, he was telling a story about a celebrity that he met when he was getting interviewed on a TV show. And this guy had everything in the world. And then sadly, he had nothing because he ended up committing suicide. And he talked about how this man had everything. But what he also had that everybody, I believe, has is this hole that he was trying to fill. And it's a God-shaped hole. And he's trying to fill it, and we all try to fill it with, distractions, money, things, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever it is to try to feel fulfilled and that we're not enough. But the only thing that can fill this God-shaped hole is God, is our higher power. And so it dawned on me when I talk to people about, this self-doubt being natural and this feeling of not enough. It's not that you're not enough. It's that God wants you to leave that hole, that space that he can fill. So if he's not filling it, or if your higher power is not filling it, of course you can always feel like you're not enough because that space is meant to be there.
Yeah. I love, so the paradigms, the metaphors, it's when you come to it in that way, you soothe yourself. And when there's a great quote, I'm soothing is solving. So once you get that aha moment, right? The fear is natural and there's a hole and I'm not meant to fill it. I'm meant to, bring God into it or bring spirit or whatever your beliefs are. I always say, I don't care if you call it
Yes,
God,
absolutely.
spirit,
Yes.
infinite intelligence, or Alibaba. There's something bigger than us out there. And when we allow that to connect with who we are, right? That's when you feel that, that more empowerment, right? I call it mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, like just, confidence, right? The same thing. I'm just using different terms. So I love what you're bringing up too. It's looking at what you're dealing with, whether it's having to speak on a panel or speak to a bunch of realtors, whatever it is, and then finding a way to see it so you feel confident. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, finding a way to see the event or to see the outcome that you're about to just clarify.
Both, right? So it's like, I have to give this thing to NFL players and the doubts come up. Well, I don't know anything about football. How am I going to talk to them? But there's somehow you have to come up with a visual in your mind, write your own outcome, right? So that you can keep walking. So now you've conquered the fear, not maybe conquered it, but you've eased the fears or the doubts. And then what's your next step in the process? I guess that's what.
Yeah. So then, what I would do is have that positive self-talk that goes something like this. Look, they're not having you come there to talk about football. They're having you come there to talk about something that connects us all as human beings. And that is that self-talk so that we can show up our best, whether they're trying to become a general manager or get picked up by a bigger team or switch teams, or what is their self-talk going into it. And there's also a lot of egos with all people. All of us have ego, right? So it's that self-talk again of saying, look, you've had success before. You've done this. You know that you care enough that you're going to find out what do they really need and what do they really need to hear. And you're going to ask the experts, the people that hired you to be there. And you're going to say, what do we want those takeaways to be? And then I will visualize myself getting there and being really happy being there. And, I did this at this big real estate conference recently where I talked about, someone asked Jerry Seinfeld one time, how do you maintain your confidence when you go out on that stage? Yeah. Because I have friends that are comedians and I think that you do too. And they've told me, that's the toughest audience in the world because either they're drinking, they're heckling, they're like, oh, make me laugh, funny guy or funny woman. They're challenging you, right? And I've paid for this. You better make me laugh, right? So Seinfeld's answer was, I decide before I walk out there that I love these people. I just simply decide I love these people and I'm going to love being there with them. And I told this story when I spoke at this event and it happened to be Valentine's Day. And I was like, and you know what? I told myself that, and you guys all look pretty lovable. And it didn't matter if they were looking at me with pickle pusses and poker faces. I just told this audience that they look lovable, and I'm happy to be here with them. And it just made it so easy and conversational and real for me because I really meant it.
Yeah. And as a comedian, I think it was, I read so many books as you do. I think it was Stephen Colbert I read about who says you have to love the bomb. Fall in love with the bomb. Like if you're a comedian, you got to get out there and some stuff's going to fly and some stuff's going to bomb. But until you love the bomb, until you, like what you said, you're, weeks out, you're preparing, then you're dealing with the fear. Then you're asking them what they want. Then it comes to the day you do it. You either hit your mark or you don't hit your mark. That's what we all do. So everybody listening, they say, oh, just do your best. So every day your best is different. Some days you hit it out of the park and some days you get a, base hit. So at the end of the presentation, at the end of whatever you're doing, then you give yourself did I hit a home run? Was it a triple, a double? But then you have to love that you're not on the couch doing nothing. You actually went out there and did it. You're not a critic in the stands screaming your big fat opinion that you're out in the field.
Exactly. And as you know, the biggest critics are the ones that aren't the ones out there, working in the arena, like that famous, quote said, that I don't remember the whole thing right now because it's long. But, one thing that I will tell you is that, and I said this to a young people's class the other day, because I think it's applicable to anything that they're going to do when they're dealing with feeling judged. I used to come out into a situation and say, oh, what are they thinking of me? And now I go out and I say, how can I help them think? So it's being other focused rather than being self-focused. And instead of worrying about, how they're going to receive me, I'm worried about, can I give them some value?
That's what I want people listening to know is that the situation isn't changing. The other people aren't changing. The outside events aren't changing. Everything that we're doing is inside. And you're writing the outcome. You're doing the positive self-talk. How can I help them? And I've already decided I love them. There's so many ways you can look at things. just tell me another tip what's one of your favorite client success stories or favorite tips that you've shared over the years?
Yeah, well, I mean, people love the idea of getting control of their breathing. I started getting my certification to be a breathing coach. And it sounds funny because people are like, I breathe every day. Why do I need to learn how to do this? Right. But we really can not be doing this right. Many times we're in a very shallow place when we're in our chest or in our nasal passages. And very many times we don't take that full good breath from that cummerbund lower place area that gives us much more oxygen. But more importantly, when we control our breathing, we can get control of our emotions, our physicality, our blood pressure, our heart rate, all of those things. So a lot of clients really love the idea of, okay, you're feeling that physical reaction, your mind's starting to race, your heart's starting to pound, you can feel it happening, the palms are starting to sweat. Go wherever you are, down to the, restroom, behind the scenes, behind the set, behind the stage, wherever it is. Take that deep breath, hold it, and then let it out twice as slow. And then you can even start to, visualize and say things with it. You can say, I'm breathing in calm and confidence. I'm breathing out stress and anxiety. I'm breathing in this visual of me feeling calm and successful, and I'm pushing out that negative visual, or I'm pushing out that old tape that I've been replaying. I'm pushing out that old memory that didn't serve me well. So you can do this. And what it does is not only help clear your mind and have you think better thoughts and visualize better thoughts, but you're almost excising the negativity out of you with that pushed out breath. So the release is really in the exhale. When people say, take a big breath, no, it's in the exhale where you're getting the release, you're pushing things out, and then you're going to start to get your breath more in control. Because there was this study done where it showed that when you're in the middle of stress and anxiety, your cognitive skills and your language skills go into about a 70% deficit. So when you're feeling like you can't think straight and you're going to blank out, that's really happening. So you need to get control of your breath and your physicality so that you can think straight and communicate.
I want to touch on that because I want to add some to that conversation, but I want you to just lead us. If you're not driving, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to just lead us in just 2 breaths, like how long would it be? Just give us an example.
Okay, sure. So I want you to close your eyes right now. And I want you to slowly breathe in, and you can breathe in. Let's just for, sake of time, let's go. I'm going to breathe in calm and I'm going to breathe in confidence. So breathe in calm and confidence and hold it and almost feel like calm and confidence. The warmth of it is swirling around your mind, swirling around your chest. And now pick something that you want to remove slowly. And maybe that's push out stress and anxiety. And in your mind, you're hearing stress and anxiety, and you're almost feeling it pass by your lips. You're pushing it out of your nose. You could even make it taste bad, like it's, coming out like bad breath, but you're getting it out of your mind, out of your system, out of your breath. And then you do it again. I'm breathing in clear, white, fresh, crisp, clear, calm, and confidence. Feel that come in like just fresh cotton smell, like something that feels like spring that's just so soothing and healing, and hold it. And then anything that's left that's negative, that tastes bad, that smells bad, that sounds bad, that hurt you, whatever, you're pushing it out again. And you can feel your shoulders drop, feel your face drop, imagine the relief and the clearing, the cleaning of the house, that you're pushing that all out of you. And then breathe back in and hold it. Anything positive that's good, seeing yourself successful, hold it there. And, your physicality doing this, literally, if you do this a couple of times, it doesn't take long, 30 seconds to a minute, you can feel that change in how quickly you're breathing, how fast your heart is beating. And there's a great even snow globe technique where you can, picture your face as your brain as a shaken snow globe, and just do the same thing I just did, but with the image of a snow globe in your mind, and watching everything that's swirling around, your to-do list, your worries, whatever, settle to the bottom like that fresh fallen blanket of white snow. And by the time you get to that, not only do you have a clear snow globe and your heart rate and your breathing is better, but you have a clear mind as well, because that's the globe of your mind.
This is so powerful. And that's why I wanted you to do it. I mean, we did 2 to 3 breaths just now, and I feel it. Like you literally feel your nervous system releasing, calming down. I love that you use all the senses. So the image of the snow globe is very powerful. Like what smells bad, tastes bad. You're using all these senses, and it just helps calm you down. Years ago, I read, what book was it now? Too many books. The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. And I love what he said. He said, when our fight and flight goes on, all our blood leaves our brain and it goes to our arms and legs. Are we going to fight or flee? Right. And our brain literally isn't working. So that's kind of what you're saying. We lose 70% capacity, probably even more sometimes, depending how stressed we are, because literally we're disconnecting from I call it the Einstein mind, our brilliance, when we're breathing shallowly. So all of these tips that Patricia's giving are what I love, are immediately applicable to anyone's life right now. I mean, you can use them while you're driving. You can use them while you're online at Starbucks and the person's taking too long in front of you. And whatever it is, at the luggage rack at JFK, which is where I recently was, waiting for the luggage. But the beauty of these tips is you can use them anywhere. So can you share with us a memorable success story in your own life or in a client's life?
Recently this happened. Thank you for leading me there. Something I forgot about. So I do a lot of continuing medical education, live stream virtual events. Sometimes they'll be beamed into like steakhouses all across the country, and they'll be filled with physicians and medical professionals. And I'll facilitate, and then I'll toss to the medical professionals. But my job is like the Rod Serling up front, if anybody remembers Twilight Zone, where I kind of do all the housekeeping. I introduce, I announce who's going to be there. I talk about the discipline or the medical or pharmaceutical topic. It's a lot up front. And I will sometimes put a lot of pressure on myself because that sets the tone. I'm the broadcast professional that they're calling in to do this. So I better knock it out of the park, or at least that's what I psych myself out about. Mm-hmm. And there's sometimes medical terminology that I have to learn last minute, or difficult names to pronounce for some of the doctors, depending on, who they are and where they're from. And I had an incident a couple of years ago. And I'll just full disclosure here, I was going through menopause. I was feeling like a fish out of water, like not comfortable in my own skin. That was part of the process of going through that. And I put all this pressure on myself for this big show open that was live. And I started to have a panic attack. My throat started to close up. I could feel I wasn't in control of my breathing. I thought I was going to pass out, and I had to keep going because I was live on the air. So I was literally talking as if picture someone is strangling you and you're trying to talk through that to fake out that nothing's happening. And I finally got through it, and I was able to walk off the set at that point because then they took over, and I went into the back and the makeup artist was there. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what just happened. I almost just passed out. She ran and got me a glass of white wine. This was when I don't drink anymore, but I was at the time. And I was thinking, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I needed to calm down for a second. I had a couple sips and I stopped it. So that happened several years ago. And whenever I was working with this client, that would rear its ugly head. I would feel, I'd see it. I'd remember these tapes and this luggage that I was carrying on. And it was never as bad, but it would happen. And I worked for this client often. And I started to think, I got to do something about this because this doesn't happen anywhere else. I go on live national television and this doesn't happen. It's just with this one client that I really care about, that I want to take good care of, and I want to knock it out of the park for them. And it's completely irrational. Yeah. So one of my clients, and I'll wrap it up because I know we're running out of time, but what is a hypnotherapist. And she came to me several years ago to get over her own humps of being in front of the camera, getting her confidence speaking, things like that. So I reached out to her and I just said, can you help me? This is what's happening. So she said, yes. So we logged onto a Zoom. And she now took me through actual hypnotherapy, which in headphones, the whole thing. And it was very effective over Zoom, which, I wasn't sure was going to work. But what I described to you, I did for the client earlier, she did from an even greater professional, wise depth of field expertise, and had me visualize not only it going successful, but took me to a very spiritual place where I feel that I'm in touch with my God, my higher power. And I could smell the deep, dark soil around me. I could see the light in front of me. It happens to be in this grove in upstate New York. And I felt this immediate calm. I felt this connection. I started to get emotional. And then the session just ended. And I was like, okay, she's like, we won't know if it's effective until you get into that situation. And a week later, I was out in California and I'm in this set. And all of a sudden, the light from the studio became the light that I saw in this exercise. The darkness around me became the dark soil. I could smell it. I felt the presence that is the sacred place that I go to. And this calm came over me. They said action. I went through the whole thing. The flow was there. Was there still a little concern? Was there still a little self-awareness? Absolutely. But it was like, it just took that old place away. And now I know I can have that as my go-to place anytime I feel that way.
Bravo. So many, I could talk to you forever. So many things to unpack here. Here we're talking to an absolute expert, professional. I've seen her in action. We've worked together. This woman is the real deal. But even the experts go to experts. So when you're dealing with something something's blocking you, we sometimes can't see our own path. So the point I'm making to everyone is there's tools out there. There's books out there. There's other people out there. The other thing you're hitting so strong is the senses, the smelling, the tasting. Years ago, when I first started visualization, I would visualize or I'd say my affirmations every day and nothing happened. Nothing would happen. Nothing would happen. And then I realized I wasn't feeling it. So bringing in the senses, it's why are some prayers answered and some prayers not, right? So when you really are feeling the soil, seeing, smelling, there's something that opens everything up in our being, right, to that experience, and you're able to relive it. And I just love that. That's what happened for you. And now it helps. And every time you go to another expert, it helps you with your next client.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. None of us, I want to be a lifelong learner. None of us know everything. None of us can, excel and be an expert in every field in every way. This is why world-class athletes still have coaches and mentors, because they know this. And, you just remind me of something in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. He talks about, I don't know if it was in his book, because I've listened to some of his, lectures. And he talks about how there was this guy named, I think his name was Cooey. We're going way back in the 20s. And he came to America and he came with this philosophy of having people recite every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And he said, he helped a lot of people, but there were a lot that he didn't help. And the reason it didn't help a lot of people is because you can't just say it rotely with no feeling, with no meaning, with nothing. And he talks about the difference of you've got to really feel it, see it, smell it, put yourself there, experience, mean it, believe it, for things to take root and for them to help mold who you're becoming and what you want to manifest and what you want to, what frequency you want to be on. I know that some people, that'll sound like, new age stuff, but it is a thing.
It is a thing.
But you have to give yourself permission to know that you have these mental tools at your disposal and not just brush it off as, something that other people do or that you couldn't learn or you don't think is worth taking the time. This is your mission to learn who you are and who you want to be and access all of the tools that are out there within and from other people and other sources throughout your entire life.
Yeah, I'm such a believer in everything you just said. So yes, yes, yes. And it's a funny story. Early in my, or very 25, 30 years ago, I was learning to windsurf with my then husband. And he said to me, he kept saying to me, you've got to visualize before we go to sleep. You dream and you visualize. And I'm like, yeah. I'm a kinesthetic learner. That's all hokey pokey. And I'll never forget, we went to Sandy Hook, New Jersey one day and he whipped out on that board and I was struggling and I was like, what's that stuff you're talking about? And if you're listening to us talk right now, everything is a visualization. I always say, if you want chicken for dinner, you're visualizing chicken for dinner and then you go to the kitchen and you make chicken. So starting with small things, just visualize waking up in a good mood. It doesn't have to be visualizing hitting it out of the park in front of a room, but just visualize dealing with the problems that come your way. Visualize handling the children when they're, having upset. So really starting small. But again, I really want to hit on what Patricia's the point she's making is to bring every sense in. What are you smelling? What are you seeing? Have your hands in the dirt? I love that analogy. I'm in this field and the dirt and the brightness, because again, those are the things that, wake us up and then shift, because the other thing that happens, and I have a different metaphor than you used. I think about those old cassette tapes. And whenever an old habitual thought comes in, I'm like, oh boy, Michelle's greatest hits. You're not good enough, pretty enough, young enough, rich enough, whatever. And I visualize an old cassette tape and, pulling the tape out of I'm like, this is the farewell tour of the old, the old tapes. We're not going to play that tape anymore, but acknowledging we all slide back and we all have these old tapes that play and these old fears that come up. I like what you said when you're in this specific situation. You're on national TV, you're going on Merit, on Dr. Phil's Merit show every morning and you're doing great. And then you go to this place in California and the trigger.
Right, exactly. Michelle, it's all mental conditioning. And why don't we just see it as that? Because we know what physical conditioning is. We accept that if we don't work out and we don't take care of our body and we don't exercise and do certain things, we're not going to stay in shape. So if we want our mental abilities to stay in shape and we want to keep expanding our mind, we have to know that that's a workout too, that it's something that we need to tend to and cultivate. And, when I talked in some of my speeches and some of my coaching, I'll say to the room, okay, I want everybody to look around right now at anything that's not from nature, anything that wasn't created by God or nature. Every single thing you're looking at first had to be in someone's mind's eye. It had to be an image. It had to be a thought. It had to be something that they created internally that then was able to become something in our outside world. And that, I hope, helps people just understand how powerful the mind's work can be.
Yeah, it's come a long way. I mean, just this weekend, I was at a conference for veterinarians, but the whole thing was their mental health. So my goal is always, there's a gym on every corner. There should be a counselor or a coach on every corner. It should be just as common, working out. I used to call it fitness for the mind, early in my career. It should be just as common to work out your mind as it is to work out your body. Yeah. And there's one last thing I want to ask you. So let's pretend, because it doesn't happen often, but you have a presentation and it doesn't go the way you want. And again, let me give you my examples. I'm always my worst critic.
Yes.
So years ago, I gave a presentation to a big audience and I followed a comedian and he was so funny and he had everybody rolling and he's like, here's me with Oprah.
That's literally a tough act to follow.
Here's me with Oprah. Here's me with Betty White. I mean, he was a really big guy, he was funny. I loved him, but I lost my confidence. So I go out there, I do my thing. I think it's okay. But I was at a big conference and I remember I had like a headset on. At the end, I felt like they pulled off the headset. They're like, we got to get the next speaker on the stage. And I was going right to the airport. And I remember being in the hallway with my luggage and I felt like one of those cartoons where the guy gets kicked out the door and then the luggage comes bouncing behind him.
Yes, totally.
I knew it wasn't a failure, but it wasn't what I wanted. Right. So my question to you, use my example. My question to you is when you have one of those moments where you just feel like, that wasn't my best. What is the strategy? And I know there's a chapter in your book too about dealing with setbacks. But for Patricia Stark, how do you get yourself up after like a fall like that or a perceived, let's even say perceived fall?
Totally. Absolutely. Right. Because there's no such thing as failure. It's just feedback. Right. But, we can beat ourselves up like that. And I think it's really important to have grace for yourself and to say, look, you're not perfect. You're not going to knock it out of the park every day. Maybe there's something that I needed to learn here that I will incorporate, later on. But just being kind to yourself and cutting yourself some slack and knowing, what, next time, instead of if only, be the person that says next time, right? And, this happened to me recently in November. I was invited last minute to do a speech on goal setting. And this because we talked about this. I consulted with you back and forth with some of our content of, what we try to teach people. And it was all rushed. And it was this, they were like tax attorneys and everything was crammed in. I was trying to get it done and then I had to run down to Atlantic City and do it. And I had been on a personal travel to Savannah leading up to it. And I was working in the morning. And so I didn't have my lead time that I usually feel that I do all that due diligence about that I talked to you about. So I did the event and I was just like, all right, it was good. I felt. But then they were rushed and we were up against time. It was kind of that similar shuffle at the end. And they're very busy and I didn't get all the feedback that I wanted. So I had all of this incredible self-doubt about it. And the whole ride home, I was thinking about this. But one thing that did happen at the end, 2 people came up to me and they handed me their business card and they were just like, some of that resonated with us. do you ever do like retreats or things like that? So that made me feel a little bit better, right? So lo and behold, still there's things I would have changed or done differently if I had the luxury of time, but I didn't. But those two people reached out to me, and now I'm going to do a retreat with their whole big team at the end of May. So as much as I was beating myself up about it, externally, other people didn't receive it that way because they found value for themselves. And now they're inviting me to another event. So, but even if that didn't happen, it was wonderful that I had that acknowledgement. But even if it didn't happen, I had to like get the emotion out and think reasonably, what was it that made it not up to my personal standard?
Really good point.
And there was all those things I mentioned to you that were out of my control.
Yeah, so good. And I love the giving yourself grace. And something I say, it's a Jim Rohn thing, I think also, look for the believers. Not everyone's going to resonate with your message. And then, we'll end on this. This is a fun story. I don't even know where I read it, but I did read that early in his career, Prince warmed up for the Rolling Stones and he got booed off the stage. And at the end, he went, oh, that's not my audience. And I thought, oh my God, that's so amazing, right?
I love it. I love that.
I'm holding up to people who can see Patricia Stark's beautiful book, Confidence. She is the real deal. Again, not only have I kind of literally grown up with her in this business, but we've done workshops together, and I'm always impressed with everything that comes out of her mouth, everything she does, the exercises. There's so much gold. What is it saying? This book might only cost you $20 or whatever, $30, but this is worth millions. So you need to go out and get yourself a copy of Confidence. Patricia, any final words of wisdom, and where can people find you and follow you?
Oh, thank you. I think that the words of wisdom is just the most important thing you will ever hear is what you say to yourself. And that is not only a quote that we've all heard over time, at least I know you and I have, but it's about also you're interpreting constantly the world around you. So you're talking to yourself about what other people are saying, what you think's happening, all from your perspective. And, sometimes we're so self-focused, and we need to flip that and just it's okay to be self-aware, but not not rejecting of yourself, and, being your own best friend. And, we're talking about the inner coach, but you also have the inner critic, but you also have the inner coach. So you have these two voices, and your inner coach is the person that's going to, how have you built other people up? How have you mentored someone? How have you spoke kind to someone? So you get to decide, am I going to hand that internal microphone to my inner critic, or should I hand it to my inner coach who I have access to at any time? And you can reach to me at patriciastark.com. The book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. The audiobook is on Audible, on social media, Patricia Stark Communications. And I'm always happy to connect with anyone that reaches out.
So if you have your phone in your hand right now, go and connect with Patricia. I have the feeling she'll be a reoccurring guest. And just thank you so much for being here today. And I look forward to our next adventure.
Anytime. I could have gone on for hours with you.